I'm so sorry, animators, because in this tutorial, we're going to be taking one step in the direction of automating your jobs. So, if you make a living by hand drawing stuff, then sorry, because everything you just saw, both those animations were actually 3D renders that I'm going to show you how to convert into a hand-drawn look. So yes, we don't need to draw anything. If you can make it in 3D, we can turn it into what we're going to call line art, because this tutorial is about the line art modifier. What am I talking about? Well, in Blender, once you have an animation, for example, this one, which I showed you how to make in a previous tutorial, pimping that out. Whatever object you have, this, a rotating cube, all you have to do is you have to select it. So this is the thing we're going to turn into line art. Hit Shift-A, go to Grease Pencil, again making sure it's selected, and go to Object Line Art, which is going to take our object and turn it into line art. So you can see now we have a new object called a line art stroke object. So we can enable, disable, but it is tied to original mesh, as you can see. So it's not going to show up unless we have this visible in the viewport. Okay. So you can see this already kind of makes a hand-drawn look, but we can make this look 1,000 times better, which is what this tutorial is about. It's how to push this line art to its limits. So you can see we have a thing that looks like we have a freestyle render, basically, like we've outlined it. How do we make this look better? So in the line art object, go to the modifier, and you're going to see the line art modifier. It's taken our object, converted it. We have a couple settings that we could do. First of all, in style, we can make it thin or thick, the strokes. So I'm going to make it thin to give it more of a pencil look. And you could do the opacity. I'm just going to, and if you have opacity 0, it's just going to give the EV render for the object. I'm going to go for full opacity. And here's a little trick just for this one. If you want the spheres to be black, what we can do is in geometry processing, enable crease on smooth, and then bump up this number. And you're going to see, because the spheres are shade smooth objects, as we bump this up, it's going to start filling this in, which is kind of like the way I would hand draw it, right? I'd make the spheres like this black thing. And the fact that it's like not perfect and it's like flickering a bit is all good. It's what makes this thing look hand drawn. But we can push this significantly further. So this is just line art. How do we make this thing look like it was drawn where every frame isn't exactly the same because you're tracing over again and again and again? That is done with more modifiers. So we could do line art, and then we can add modifiers on top of it. So I'm going to add a noise modifier. And noise is what really makes this thing look hand-drawn. So you can see it's already breaking this up quite a deal. And the main thing is make sure this randomize is enabled. That way we get a new generation every 4 frames, I suppose. And it's going to make it look like, is it that every 4 frames? Or no, it's going to make it look like it's flickering and like we're tracing it over and over and over again. But this is a bit extreme. So first of all, the position is going to be how, for each stroke, this object is composed of many line strokes. How far away from its center should it be? So when we set it back to 0, we get our original shape. I want it to be just a bit of deviation, just so it looks like nothing crazy. The strength is going to be how, kind of like the opacity of these. So some of them are going to be darker and then lighter, and that's going to flicker. So it's almost like we put a different amount of strength into the pencil strokes. Thickness is exactly what it sounds like, how thick these are. So we can make that extreme or not extreme. And all of this is going to contribute, especially to these balls. It's going to contribute to a hand-drawn look. But even this doesn't look that good because it almost looks like each stroke, for example, this one, for example, is just kind of popping in and out of different states, right? So what I want to do is I want to say, listen, there should be variation within the stroke, not just for each stroke. We can do this by bumping up the noise scale, which you can see adds detail to individual strokes. So now this is going up and down and up and down. And you want to be tasteful with this. But this is what's really going to give it a hand-drawn look. And to give it more geometry to work with, I mean, it's strokes, but we're still kind of using geometry. I'm going to add in a subdivide modifier, throw that on top. So here is without, and here's with. It's just going to let us have noise scale be a bit finer. And that is pretty much how I generated the look. Of course, I kind of played around with these numbers more. So the position's kind of the main one. You don't want to go too far with this. But this is the kind of the process I used. And this updates with our mesh. If I, let's disable overlays. If I rotate this thing, it's going to keep the line art style no matter what angle we're doing it from. So this is kind of a cool way to take your thing and convert it into a hand-drawn look. We can also, I mean, you could do this for multiple objects. So here I've added a cube. We could scale it down, and we could, again, Shift-A, grease pencil, object line art. Although this one, whoops, well, that crashed Blender. It didn't seem to like that. But that one didn't have our settings, our modifiers from before. So either way, that's the tutorial, and I'm not just ending it because of the crash. I'm ending it because I showed you how to make the thing, but luckily the crash was at the very end. Kind of cringe. What am I going to say? Either way, thank you for watching this tutorial. I know it was a short one, but at the end of all these, I like to pimp the ever-living shit out of the Patreon. So there's a link in the description for where you could join the Patreon, where you could join nearly 800 people and support this channel and the CG Matter channel if you like what I do here. But you get 3 benefits when you become a patron, so let me tell you about those. First of all, you get early access to tutorials. You could have seen this tutorial multiple days early because when you are watching this, me and a friend are going to be walking across Massachusetts in 7 days is the idea. So it's 140 miles. That's going to be quite a thing. But I'm going to be away from keyboard. So of course, I have a bit of a backlog. So you can see tutorials early. You can download blend files. So for example, the torus thing that I showed you, you can just download it. You don't need to make it yourself. And that's part of a 2-part tutorial series at this point. And there are hundreds of blend files and project files that you can download since I've been doing this since 2019. And thirdly, exclusive, or did I say exclusive in the beginning? I meant early access. And now I mean exclusive tutorials. Those are tutorials that I fucked it up. Those are tutorials that are only for patrons. There's something like 12 to 20 of those. You could check out the catalog of those. Those are just kind of like more complicated geometry nodes tutorials that I didn't throw on the channel. Either way, thank you for watching, making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you learned something, and I will see you next time.